A little girl speaks with a ghost under a tree that no longer exists, and a forgotten curse awakens. There was a small village nestled between thick woods and rice paddies, far from the bustling city lights. Life moved slowly there, as if the village had been forgotten by time. The people were kind yet cautious, especially after sunset. It wasn't just the usual fear of wild animals or darkness that kept them indoors at night. It was something older, something whispered about behind closed doors, the Kuntilanak. At the edge of the village stood an old wooden house. No one had lived there in years. The paint peeled from the walls like dead skin, and the air around it seemed permanently cold. Children were warned never to go near it. "She lives there," the elders would say, "the woman in white." 17-year-old Arya had grown up hearing the stories. Her grandmother often recited them when she was little, warning her never to whistle at night or to look into mirrors in the dark. But Arya was never one to believe in ghost stories. She was modern, rational. She had a smartphone. She knew about science. Ghosts to her were relics of fear passed down by generations too scared to question them. But everything changed the night her best friend Lena disappeared. It was during the harvest festival. Music filled the village square. Children played with sparklers, and the smell of grilled chicken and sweet corn wafted through the air. Lena had slipped away for just a moment to take a photo near the mango tree that stood by the old house. She never came back. The next morning, her phone was found cracked and bloodied near the tree roots. No footprints, no sign of struggle, only the faint, sour scent of jasmine lingering in the air. Arya was devastated, but also furious. The villagers muttered about the Kuntilanak. They said Lena must have disturbed her, that the tree by the old house was cursed. But Arya didn't believe it. She couldn't. And that's when the dreams began. Every night for the next week, Arya would wake at 3:13 a.m., heart pounding, always the same dream. A soft, high-pitched giggle echoing in the dark. A rustling of leaves, and the haunting image of a woman in white stand under the mango tree. Her face hidden by long black hair, her feet not touching the ground. Then the dreams began to bleed into reality. One morning, Arya woke to find her window open, though she was sure she had locked it. The scent of jasmine hung in the air, and on her windowsill was a long strand of jet black hair. The villagers whispered louder now. "She's chosen you," one of the elders warned, eyes wide with fear. "You mustn't go near that tree again." But Arya couldn't let it go. She needed to know what happened to Lena. Even if it meant facing the legend herself. Arya tried to convince herself it was all in her head. Stress, grief, sleep paralysis maybe. But the dreams wouldn't stop. Every night she heard the same giggle, childlike, sweet, and wrong. She began to dread falling asleep, and no matter how many times she threw away the strand of hair from her windowsill, a new one would appear the next morning. Always in the same place. The scent of jasmine, once comforting, now made her stomach turn. She finally told her grandmother everything, about the dreams, the hair, the giggles in the night. The old woman grew silent. Her hands, knotted with age, trembled as she reached for a tiny wooden box from a locked drawer. Inside was a yellowed photograph of a young woman, her eyes dark, her smile soft. She looked almost like Lena. "This is Myrnie," her grandmother said. "She lived in the village, long before you were born. Beautiful girl, kind but cursed. She was with child, and the father had promised to marry her, but he ran away before the wedding. Myrnie went mad. She took her own life, right under the mango tree." Arya stared at the photo. "And you think she became the Kuntilanak?" Her grandmother nodded slowly. "Her soul never passed. She stays. She hates betrayal, hates liars, and she takes girls like Lena." "But why me?" Arya whispered. Her grandmother hesitated, then spoke the words that chilled her to the bone. "Because you called her." Arya's throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "That night," her grandmother said, "during the festival, you were laughing, whistling, just like the stories say never to do at night. You were near the tree. She must have heard you." Arya felt sick. She remembered now. She had whistled, a tune from her phone, joking with Lena as they passed by the old house. Lena had gone back to take a picture alone. And now Lena was gone. That night, Arya tried to stay awake, but sleep claimed her. And once again, the dream came. But this time it was different. She stood in the village square, only it was abandoned. The air was thick, moonlight silver and cold. She heard the giggle again, closer now. Then the voice. "You called me." She turned, and there she was. The Kuntilanak hovered just inches off the ground, her long white dress tattered, hair cascading like a curtain of ink. And now Arya could see her face. It was pale, beautiful, almost sorrowful, until it smiled. A smile that tore too wide, showing rows of blackened teeth. Arya woke with a scream, drenched in sweat, and on her desk was a new gift. Not hair this time. A fingernail, long, yellowed, still wet with blood. Arya didn't go to school the next day. She couldn't. Her hands shook too badly to hold a pencil, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw the Kuntilanak's face, those teeth, that smile, the whispered voice in her dream. "You called me." She stared at the fingernail on her desk, still lying where she left it, wrapped it in tissue and flushed it, trying to erase the evidence. But her stomach churned. Something inside her whispered it wouldn't matter. That night, Arya covered all the mirrors in her room with cloth, just like her grandmother once taught her. "Ghosts find you through reflections," she'd said, especially her. But one mirror remained uncovered, the one inside her closet, a narrow vertical mirror screwed to the inside of the door. She had forgotten it. It was around 2:50 a.m. when the air in her room shifted, still, cold, heavy, her breath fogged with each exhale. The scent of jasmine bloomed in the darkness like a ghostly hand pressing against her face. Then came the creak. The closet door, untouched by her for days, creaked open on its own. Just a sliver. Just enough. Arya sat up, frozen in bed, heart pounding. She could barely see the mirror, but what she saw made her blood stop. In the reflection, she saw herself sitting up in bed. But there was someone standing behind her. Long black hair, pale white gown, a hand resting gently on her shoulder. Arya spun around. No one was there. She looked back at the mirror. Still there. Still touching her. She screamed and threw a pillow at the closet door, slamming it shut. Her grandmother burst into the room seconds later, lighting incense and muttering prayers, hands trembling as she brushed Arya's face with burning leaves. "She's here," her grandmother whispered. "She's trying to enter." The next day, Arya's mother demanded they take her to a doctor, said she was hallucinating, said she needed rest. But her grandmother knew better. She took Arya to the village shaman. The shaman, Pakbudi, was old, blind in one eye, and smelled of ashes. He listened quietly, then touched Arya's wrist. "You crossed the veil," he said simply. "She followed your voice. She marked you." Arya swallowed. "Can I undo it?" "There is a way," he said, "but it is dangerous. You must go back to the tree. Offer her something, something of value, and ask her what she wants." Arya's voice trembled. "Won't that make her angrier?" Pakbudi nodded. "Yes, but doing nothing is worse." Later that night, Arya stood in front of the mango tree, clutching a photo of her and Lena together. Her heart raced, her hands cold and damp. The moon was bright, the tree swayed, though there was no wind. She placed the photo at the base of the trunk. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The tree whispered back, a laugh, high-pitched, mocking. Then the voice, clear and sharp as broken glass. "Bring him to me." The voice echoed through the still air like a blade slicing through silence. "Bring him to me." Arya's breath caught in her throat. Her knees trembled as if the very earth beneath her rejected her presence. She backed away from the mango tree, eyes darting around. But the night was still. Too still. No wind, no insects, just that lingering scent of jasmine and a sense of being watched from every angle. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, her grandmother refused to let her leave the house. But Arya couldn't sit idle. She kept replaying the Kuntilanak's words in her mind. Bring him to me. But who was him? Myrni's story came back to her, betrayed by the man who left her with child. Could the Kuntilanak still be seeking vengeance for that betrayal? Was it possible that he had descendants still living? She knew she had to speak to someone who remembered Myrni. Her grandmother mentioned a woman named Buretno, old, half-blind, and rarely left her hut near the river. People said she was a friend of Myrni's once. Arya went to see her. The old woman sat on a bamboo mat, grinding herbs with shaking hands. When Arya spoke Myrni's name, Buretno froze. Her cloudy eyes narrowed, and her lips pressed into a thin line. You should not say her name, she whispered. Even the trees remember her. I need to know who the man was, Arya said, the one who left her. Buretno was silent for a long time. Then she pointed toward the hills. The man's name was Surya. He left the village before Myrni died, became a merchant, got married, had children. Is he still alive? Dead, long ago. But his son, Ari Wibowo, he lives in the town, just outside the district. Arya's heart pounded. Ari Wibowo. Was he the one the Kuntilanak wanted? Later that day, Arya found him on social media. He was in his late 40s, ran a carpentry business. A father of 3. It didn't make sense. Why would the Kuntilanak want him? But that night, the dreams returned, and this time it wasn't Arya who was dreaming. It was him. Ari Wibowo sat upright in bed at 3:13 a.m., drenched in sweat. He had seen her. The woman in white. She had whispered his name from beneath the mango tree, her voice like silk wrapped around a dagger. He didn't know who she was. But she said one thing that rattled his soul. Your father left me to die. Now you will bring him back. When Arya reached out to him the next day, he was pale and shaken. I don't know what this is, he said. I don't know any woman named Myrni. But last night, she came into my dream. She told me you would find me. Arya nodded. She wants you to come to the tree. He stared at her, horrified. That's where she died, isn't it? Yes. What happens if I go? Arya looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know. But deep inside, she feared the truth. The Kuntilanak wasn't asking for an apology. She was asking for blood. Ari Wibowo stood at the edge of the village, staring at the mango tree with wide, uncertain eyes. The villagers watched from their windows, their faces pale with fear. Word had spread that someone was foolish enough to approach the cursed ground again. And not just anyone, the son of Surya. Arya walked beside him, heart pounding with every step. The closer they got, the heavier the air became. It felt thick, humid, as if the night itself were warning them to turn back. This is madness, Ari muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. We should call someone, a priest, a monk. She doesn't want prayers, Arya said softly. She wants you. They stopped beneath the tree, the same one where Lena disappeared, the same one that haunted Arya's dreams. The branches stretched above them like twisted arms, and the scent of jasmine was overwhelming now, thick and rotting. Ari stepped forward. I didn't do anything, he called out. I never knew her. I didn't even know about my father's past. A gust of cold wind rushed through the clearing, and a low, echoing giggle swept around them like a taunt. I'm sorry, Ari shouted. I'm sorry for what he did. Silence. Then the ground beneath the tree began to shift. Not shake, shift, like something beneath the soil was moving, breathing. And then she rose. The Kuntilanak. Her gown hung like wet paper from her thin, floating body. Her long black hair coiled and twisted in the air around her like smoke. Her face remained hidden, but Arya felt her eyes, burning, focused entirely on Ari. He fell to his knees. Please, he whispered. I have children. I didn't know. The Kuntilanak glided forward. One pale hand emerged from her sleeve, stretching toward him with slow, unnatural grace. Arya acted on instinct. She stepped between them. "Take me instead," she said, voice shaking. "Let him go. I'm the one who called you." The Kuntilanak stopped. The air went still again. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, mournful, as if she were speaking through layers of pain. "You called me, yes, but he carries his father's debt." Ari sobbed. "What do you want from me?" The Kuntilanak lifted her hand and pointed toward the base of the tree. "Blood!" There the ground split open slightly, revealing a deep, black pit lined with rotting roots. From within, a faint red glow pulsed like a heartbeat. "You will enter," she said. "You will find him." "My father's dead," Ari whispered. The Kuntilanak's smile widened, cruel and endless. "Not down there." Ari looked at Arya, eyes wide with terror. "She wants me to go into hell?" Arya didn't know how to answer. The pit beckoned. The mango tree creaked above them. And somewhere deep in the shadows, something else began to stir. Something older, more ancient than even the ghost before them. Something hungry. The pit at the base of the mango tree breathed. That was the only word Arya could find. Breathed. A low inhale, like the soil was alive, pulsing, waiting. The Kuntilanak hovered silently beside it, her hair waving without wind, her eyes never leaving Ari Wibowo. Arya grabbed his hand. "You don't have to go. Maybe there's another way." Ari looked at her, pale and drenched in sweat. "If I don't, she might come for my children next." He knelt before the hole, the red glow lighting up his terrified face. Slowly he climbed in, his feet disappearing into the earth, then his waist, his shoulders, and then he was gone. The hole sealed behind him with a sickening shtick, like a mouth closing over food. Arya screamed, "What did you do?" The Kuntilanak turned to her. "I opened the way. Now we wait." The ghost vanished into mist. And Arya was alone. Beneath the tree, Ari found himself in a tunnel of twisted roots and earth, illuminated by the red glow that pulsed through the walls like veins. The air was hot and moist, and the smell, sour, metallic, ancient. He walked and walked. Time had no meaning there. He couldn't tell if minutes passed or hours. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a chamber. And there, sitting in the center, was a man. Dressed in old Javanese robes, eyes hollow, hands stained with blood that never dried. "Who are you?" Ari asked, voice shaking. The man looked up. "You know who I am." It took a second. Then Ari whispered, "Father." Surya rose. His form flickered like smoke, as if he wasn't entirely real. "You came for her," he said, "but you don't understand. What did you do to her?" "I promised her everything," Surya said, voice hollow. "Then I ran. I left her to bear the shame, the child, the pain. She died under that tree, and when she rose again, she made a vow." Ari trembled. "What vow?" "That every son of my blood will feel what she felt. Abandonment, fear, and finally death. Why didn't you stop her?" Surya smiled, a broken thing. "I've been trapped here ever since, and now, so are you." The ground shuddered. Roots slithered along the walls like snakes. From the shadows, a familiar laugh echoed. "She was coming." The Kuntilanak's voice filled the chamber. "The blood has returned to the seed. The curse must bloom." Ari turned, searching for escape, but the tunnel had vanished. The walls had closed. He was inside her world now. Above, Arya waited at the base of the tree for a sign, but none came. Only a new sound began to emerge from the soil, crying. Not a man's voice, a baby's. Arya froze. The sound rising from beneath the mango tree was unmistakable, high-pitched, trembling, and full of pain. A baby crying. But there was no child, only earth and roots, and silence all around, save for the soft, relentless wailing from below. She knelt, pressed her ear to the soil. The sound grew louder, as if the ground itself held a newborn, forgotten, alone, suffering. Then a whisper, barely audible. Find the cradle. Arya stumbled back, heart pounding. The voice was not her own, not the Kuntilanak's either. It was something else, something softer, sadder. Later that day she returned to Buretno, the old woman by the river. The old woman's eyes glazed over when Arya mentioned the crying. I heard it once, Buretno murmured. After Myrni died, that same sound, a baby crying beneath the roots. But when we dug, we found nothing, no grave, just cold earth. What does it mean? Buretno took a long breath. The child was never born. She died pregnant, remember? That spirit, it doesn't just haunt, it holds on. She keeps the child with her. Always. Arya's breath caught. Then the baby's spirit is trapped too? Maybe. Or maybe it's the part of her that still suffers. A ghost within a ghost. Arya left with a terrible thought. If she could reach the child, free it, maybe it could weaken the Kuntilanak. Maybe she didn't need to fight the ghost. Maybe she needed to mourn with it. That night, Arya returned to the tree. This time, she brought an old cradle, her own from childhood. She placed it at the base of the trunk, wrapped in white cloth, and lit 7 candles in a circle. I don't want to fight you, she said aloud, but I won't let you take anyone else. Not him, not me, not the children. The air turned cold again. From the tree came a rustle. Then a form stepped out, not floating but walking. The Kuntilanak looked different now. Her gown was torn, muddied, her face visible, young, beautiful, human. Her eyes met Arya's wide with grief. She knelt before the cradle and wept. Arya didn't move. She just watched, heartbreaking. The ghost touched the cradle gently, her fingers trembling, and whispered a lullaby, so soft, so sad. Then from within the cradle, Arya saw it. A tiny, faint flicker of light. A spirit, the child. The Kuntilanak looked up, tears streaking her pale face. He never had a name, she whispered. Arya's throat tightened. Then give him one. The ghost smiled, a real human smile, and whispered something in Javanese. The wind carried it away. The candles blew out all at once. And the Kuntilanak disappeared. Just like that. Arya waited. Minutes passed. Then the soil cracked open, gently this time, like a flower blooming. And from it, Ari Wibowo crawled out, alive, breathing, shaken but whole. He looked at her with disbelief. What did you do? I gave her something she lost, Arya said. A name, a moment of peace. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't over. Not completely, because not all things buried stay buried. Ari Wibowo sat at the edge of the clearing, mud clinging to his clothes, his face ghostly pale. His eyes wouldn't stop scanning the tree as if expecting her to return at any moment. Arya sat beside him, offering him a flask of water. He drank it slowly, hands shaking. She let me go, he whispered. I don't know why. She found her child, Arya said. Maybe for the first time, she felt whole again. But Ari didn't look convinced. No, she said something before I climbed out. Just one sentence. One still walks with my blood. Arya's heart skipped a beat. What does that mean? He turned toward her, voice barely a whisper. I think it means there's another. They both sat in silence as the wind stirred the leaves above them. The mango tree, once cursed, now stood eerily calm. But the air still felt heavy. The silence wasn't peace. It was pause. Ari pulled out his phone, scrolled through pictures of his family. He stopped at one, his eldest daughter, Rani. She's been different lately, talking to things in the corners of her room, drawing women in white. Arya's blood ran cold. She's only a child. He nodded, but blood remembers. Spirits, they don't just haunt places. Sometimes they follow. That night in Ari's home far from the village, Rani sat in bed, crayon in hand, staring at the wall. Her drawing was simple. a tall tree with roots that reached into red soil, and beside it, a woman in white holding a baby wrapped in shadow. Ronnie whispered to the empty room, "Is that your baby?" There was no answer, just a faint creak from the closet. Her mother walked by the hallway and paused, watching her from the crack of the door. "Ronnie, who are you talking to?" Ronnie smiled. "Auntie Myrnie." The hallway light flickered. Her mother stepped into the room, uneasy. "Honey, there's no one there." "Yes, there is," Ronnie said calmly. "She says she used to be sad, but she's not anymore." Her mother glanced at the drawing and felt her stomach twist. The woman in white had no face, but the baby in her arms had black eyes. That night, Arya had another dream. She stood beneath the mango tree again, but this time she wasn't alone. Dozens of shadows moved around her, whispering, watching. Spirits, some broken, others angry. In the center stood the Kuntilanak, her face calm, her hair still, her arms empty. "I've passed on," she said, "but my story is not the only one." Arya reached for her. "What do you mean?" The ghost tilted her head. "There are others like me, forgotten, wronged, waiting beneath roots, beneath homes, beneath bloodlines." Arya woke with a start. The mango tree may have given back the man it tried to claim, but the curse had merely changed its shape. A new name would soon be whispered by children in the dark, and the next legend would begin. Ronnie had always been a quiet child, observant, sensitive. But after her father returned from the village, something in her shifted. She no longer played with her friends. She spoke in old, forgotten phrases. And each night, she woke screaming, saying her dreams were red. Her parents tried to dismiss it at first. "She's just scared. She heard too much," Ari said. But Arya wasn't so sure. Ronnie wasn't just scared. She was changing. One evening, Arya found a notebook under Ronnie's bed. It was filled with drawings, done in deep crimson crayon. The same woman appeared again and again. Long hair, a white gown, and beside her, a figure that grew larger with each page. A child. And it wasn't Ronnie. Arya flipped to the last page. The woman now stood behind Ronnie, her shadow stretching across the girl's body. Underneath, scrawled in shaky letters, was one word: belong. That night, Ronnie stood at her window, looking out into the garden. The mango tree wasn't there, of course, not in the city, but she swore she saw one in her dreams. She swore she climbed down its roots every night and listened to someone humming a lullaby from below. Her mother came into the room. "Sweetheart, you need to rest." Ronnie didn't turn. "She said you were brave. She said you helped her." "Who said that?" "Auntie Myrnie." Arya's breath caught. "She's not angry anymore," Ronnie continued. "She's just lonely. She's looking for the others, the other babies." Arya knelt beside her. "There are no other babies, Ronnie." Ronnie finally turned. Her eyes looked darker somehow, deeper. "Yes, there are. She showed me." That night, Arya did something she had avoided for years. She called her grandmother in Banyuwangi, an old woman known in the family as a Penjaga Garisdara, a bloodline keeper, a woman who carried stories no one else dared repeat. When Arya explained what was happening, the old woman fell silent for a long time. Then she said, "You woke one ghost. Now others have noticed. The girl is the bridge." "What do I do?" Arya asked. "You don't stop it," her grandmother said. "You guide it. If Ronnie becomes the next storyteller, then you must make sure she tells the truth, or the ghost will tell it for her." Arya stared at the phone, stunned. Ronnie was being chosen, not to be haunted, but to carry the whispers, to be the next link in a cursed chain that stretched through generations. The next day, Ronnie drew a new picture, a row of graves, some fresh, some open, and standing among them, a tree growing from bones. The days passed like a slow, unrelenting tide, and the air around the Wibowo family grew heavier. Ari could no longer deny that something was deeply wrong with Ronnie. The light in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a quiet, unsettling stillness. At night, she would sit by the window, staring out at the garden where no mango tree stood. Yet still she would whisper as if something called to her from beneath the earth. Arya didn't know what to do. Every night she prayed for her daughter's safety, hoping that the curse, the lingering shadow of the Kuntilanak, would not find its way into their home. But deep inside, she felt the pull of something ancient. The bloodline was being called. One evening, as Arya was tidying up the living room, she overheard Rani talking to herself in a soft, melodic tone, not her own voice. Arya hurried into the room. "Rani, who are you talking to?" The little girl looked up from her drawing table, her eyes wide and distant. "To the woman in white." Arya felt a chill run down her spine. "What is she saying?" "She said I'll tell her story, but I need to see the other graves first." The words felt like ice sinking into her chest. That night, Arya could no longer sleep. The air felt thick, as if something was watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike. She knew what she had to do, but the thought filled her with dread. The next morning, she took Rani to the village. The journey felt different this time, like a pilgrimage. Rani sat quietly in the back seat, her eyes closed, as if hearing something only she could understand. The road to the old mango tree felt longer than before. As they arrived, the village seemed strangely empty. The usual chatter, the laughter, the voices of children, none of it filled the air. Only silence and the weight of the past. The moment Arya stepped out of the car, she felt it. The presence. The tree was there, but not in the same form. It had grown larger, darker, the roots twisted and gnarled, reaching like hands into the earth. The air was suffocating, thick with the remnants of sorrow and rage. Rani stood beside her, looking up at the tree with an unsettling calm. "She's waiting for me." Arya knelt beside her daughter. "Rani, you don't have to do this. We can go back. We can leave." But Rani shook her head, her voice soft, almost reverent. "I need to see her. I need to understand." Without warning, Rani walked forward, moving towards the base of the tree, where the roots had split the earth wide open. Arya reached out to stop her, but Rani stopped and turned, her eyes empty, distant. "She's calling me," Rani said, her voice hollow. "I'm the one who will listen." Arya hesitated, torn between protecting her daughter and understanding what had to be done. She took a deep breath and followed Rani, stepping closer to the cursed roots, her heart pounding. Then she saw it, a shadow at the base of the tree. It was the Kuntilanak. She stood there not as a vengeful ghost, but as a mother, cradling her child, both figures shrouded in an eerie light. "You've come," the ghost whispered, her voice gentle but filled with sorrow. Arya stepped forward, her heart heavy with fear. "Please, please, let my daughter go." The Kuntilanak's gaze shifted to Rani, her eyes softening. "I do not wish to hurt her. She is the one who has the blood I seek, the blood that was lost." Rani stepped closer, her hand reaching out, her fingers brushing the ground where the roots met the soil. "She will tell your story, won't you?" the Kuntilanak murmured. Rani's lips parted, and she spoke, her voice not her own. "The blood that was spilled, the child that was lost. I will tell of your pain. I will tell of the debt that was never paid." And in that moment, Arya knew. Rani was no longer just her daughter. She had become the next keeper of the curse, the next storyteller. The air was still as Arya stood frozen, watching her daughter speak words that weren't her own. Rani's voice echoed in the empty clearing, the words strange and haunting as they flowed from her lips. The blood spilled, the child lost, the woman in white, she who never forgot, the debt unfulfilled, until the last of the bloodline stands in her place. Arya reached out, her hands trembling, as she tried to touch Rani's shoulder, but her fingers stopped inches away. There was an invisible barrier, a pull, something that kept them apart. "Rani, stop," Arya begged, her voice breaking. But Rani did not hear her. She stood with her eyes fixed ahead, lost in the trance of something ancient and powerful. The Kuntilanak watched them both, her gaze shifting between mother and child. "You see," she whispered, The story must be told. The bloodline must carry it forward. I chose her because she will remember. Arya's heart tightened. She felt the weight of what was happening. The curse, the past, the debt that had been passed down through generations. Her daughter had become a vessel for something far older than she could understand. And with that came a terrible price. Please, Arya cried. Please don't take her from me. The Kuntilanak's voice softened, her expression sorrowful. I do not take, I give. She will carry my story, and in return, I will release her from the pain. From the curse that binds us. Arya's breath caught. The ghost's words were not a promise. They were a pact, a twisted bargain, where one life was exchanged for another, where pain was inherited rather than healed. But the price, the Kuntilanak continued, the price is always the same. She must speak my name and the bloodline will be bound forever. Rani's lips parted again, as if the words were coming from her very soul. Myrni, the name rang out, sharp and final. And in that instant, the air seemed to tremble. The earth groaned, and the shadows around the tree twisted as though alive. The wind howled as a rush of memories flooded Arya's mind, memories she had never known. Of a woman in white, of a child crying beneath the roots, of a debt that was never paid. Rani blinked and shook her head, coming back to herself with a start. Mother, she whispered, her voice weak. What? What did I say? Arya reached for her, pulling her into an embrace. You're still here, she whispered, relief flooding through her. You're still my daughter. But the Kuntilanak's voice echoed through the air one final time. The story is told, the bloodline continues, and now she will walk the path of those who came before her. The spirit's form began to fade, her figure dissolving into the mist, leaving behind an unsettling stillness. The tree seemed to grow quieter, as though it had released its hold on the earth. But as the last whispers of the ghost faded, Arya knew the curse was not truly broken. It had only shifted, changed shape, and found a new way to live. Rani pulled away, her expression confused. What happened, Mother? Arya looked at her daughter, fear creeping into her heart. The child she had saved was still the child she had always known, but something was different now. The price of the story had been paid, and the bloodline would never be the same. Nothing, Arya whispered. Nothing happened. But deep down, she knew that their lives, the story they lived, had changed forever. Days passed, and the weight of what had transpired in the village hung over Arya like a cloud that wouldn't dissipate. The mango tree remained, though it no longer seemed like the source of terror it once was. The curse had shifted, transformed into something different, something far more subtle. Rani's behavior had returned to normal, or so it seemed on the surface. She played with her friends, laughed, and even began to sleep peacefully again. But Arya couldn't shake the feeling that her daughter was no longer entirely the same. At night, when the house fell silent, Arya would often hear her daughter whispering softly to herself. The words were familiar but strange, fragments of the past, snippets of stories told in whispers. Arya could never catch them all, but each time it felt like the room itself held its breath. One evening, Rani stood by the window again, staring out into the darkening sky. Arya called her name, but Rani didn't respond. Slowly, Arya walked up behind her, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Rani, she said softly, are you all right? Rani turned to her, her eyes distant, as if she were somewhere else entirely. Mother, she said, her voice calm yet unsettling. I have to tell them. Tell them? Arya's heart skipped a beat. Who do you mean? The children of the village, Rani said, her gaze shifting to the moonlit trees outside. The ones who will come after me. Arya felt the blood drain from her face. Rani, no. We don't need to go back there. You don't need to. But Rani's voice was firm. I do. I must. She turned and walked out of the room, leaving Arya frozen, her mind racing. It was then that Arya realized what the Kuntilanak had meant. Her daughter was not just a vessel of the story. She was the next keeper of the curse. Ronnie had become the storyteller, and the bloodline, forever tied to the spirit's sorrow and rage, would not let go. As Arya followed Ronnie to the door, the chill of the night air seeped through her bones. She caught up to her daughter in the garden, standing in front of the very spot where the old mango tree had once stood. It wasn't there now. There was only the bare earth, the patch where roots had once thrived. Ronnie stood still, her eyes closed, as if listening to something far away. "You don't have to do this," Arya pleaded, her voice cracking. "Please!" But Ronnie's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "It's not my choice anymore, Mother." And just as Arya was about to reach out, she heard it. A soft rustling, a whisper on the wind. The air grew heavy and she felt the presence again, not just of the Kuntilanak, but of something else, something ancient, something powerful. Ronnie's voice lifted once more, soft but clear, carrying the words of an age-old story. "The blood that is born from sorrow shall never rest. The woman who waits beneath the earth shall be heard, and the children shall speak her name." Arya's heart sank as the wind howled around them, the very ground beneath her feet seeming to tremble. Ronnie's figure became blurry, as if she were merging with the shadows. The Kuntilanak's whisper echoed in the distance. "The debt is never fully paid. The bloodline never ends." Arya reached for Ronnie, but her hands passed through her daughter, as though she were made of smoke. And then, in the blink of an eye, Ronnie was gone. The night fell silent once again. Arya stood in the garden, her breath shallow, her heart shattered. The curse, the bloodline, the story, it was not over. It had only just begun. Ronnie was no longer a child, but the new storyteller, carrying the burden of the past with her every step. The story would continue, whispered in the wind, carried through the blood, forever passed from one generation to the next. And in the quiet of the night, if you listen closely enough, you might still hear the soft hum of a lullaby, drifting through the air, beckoning the next keeper of the story to come.